It's been a long time since I played Harvest Moon on the Super Nintendo. I remember a friend telling me about it way back in the late 90s. We eventually found the ROM online, and yeah, my first experience with it was really good. And then after, a few weeks of playing it and kind of doing everything that you could do in this game, but still having like a good year and a half left on the timer, it got a little boring. So this game was released in 1997 on the Super Nintendo, and it was very late in that console's life cycle. Most developers had moved on to the N64, most gamers had moved on to the N64 at that point, so this game didn't get a whole lot of promotion. It was just sort of released, and people crossed their fingers and hoped for the best. So there is a story for the first Harvest Moon. It's not very good, and it's pretty bare bones. You bought a farm, and now it's time to fix it up and start making money. You have 2.5 years to turn things around. What happens if you don't? Nothing. What happens if you do? Really nothing. It's very, very simple. You just have to, build your new life there, and that's pretty much it. Other games in the series would expand on this, but right away, with this first one, you're just kind of dropped in this farm and basically told good luck for the next 2.5 years of in-game time, by the way, not in real time. From there, it's all up to you. You can upgrade your house twice, and you can romance one of the 4 women that are in this town. There are a few people to talk to, but for the most part, it's a pretty barren game. You get a few things that pop up, like quests, but they're not really all that hard. And the game's little world that they've created for you is not all that big. I'll talk more about that once I get into the gameplay really quick. So the gameplay can be quite a bit of fun right off the bat, but it got hard for me to kind of get past how modern games have just greatly improved on the core game mechanics of this. The controls are great, but the inventory is very small. You can only hold 2 items at a time. So if you're carrying, your seeds, you have to set those down if you want to pick up something else. You can't, select the spaces you want your seeds to go. You just kind of stand in the middle of a field, throw them up in the air, and then they get planted. This also causes a problem where you can't get at the center crop in order to water it, since you can't walk across your crops. That's why you're going to see a whole bunch of U-shaped fields. If you've played any of these farming sims, you know you need to clear a spot for your field and then you need to plow it. This means you're going to need your scythe to cut the bushes up, you need your hammer to break rocks, and your axe in order to chop up wood. Then you need your hoe in order to plow your field. This is where only having 2 inventory spots comes into a bit of a problem, where you need to keep running back to your shed to pick up your tools. It also means you can't pick up multiple crops at once. So you have to pick up 1 potato, run to the little bin, throw it in there, then run back and pick up another potato. And do not miss the bin, otherwise the potato hits the ground, or the crop hits the ground, and then it shatters and it's gone. It can be a little frustrating if you have more than 5 crop fields out. So, yeah, things get a little annoying. You also can't store things in the little bin that you need to sell them. So, if the guy shows up at the end of the day and he collects all of your shit, do not put anything in there afterwards because it won't count for the next day. He tells you this right away. If you put crops in here, it's going to spoil. Thankfully, you don't need to take milk or eggs all the way over there. You have your own little bin inside the chicken coop and the pasture for the cows. So that's nice. You do need to grow grass in order to get feed for them. That's not really that big of a deal since the grass doesn't need to be watered. You can just leave it there. And yeah, it's a very basic game. You don't need to build any buildings. They're already there. You can't upgrade any of them. It's not as exciting as any of the modern games are, but it is a game from 1996, 1997, and it's on a Super Nintendo cartridge, so they couldn't do as much as they can now. Once you get past the fact that the only thing that you can do in this game is farm your crops and tend to your animals, and then you've finished the dating sim in this, you realize that's it. You've got 2 seasons to do everything, and then you've got 2 seasons where you just kind of, wander around the few locations that are here. Because there's no dungeon to explore, no weapons to pick up, no enemies to fight. This is all you do. And if you somehow manage to get married before the 2.5-year part, you immediately run out of stuff that's going on, and you just kind of have to wait for the few festivals that show up. And the festivals are kind of fun. There are a few things that you can do with those, so those are kind of nice. I'll talk more about those later because it's one of the things that I really like about this game. When I was taking notes on this, I was really doing my best to not compare this to modern farming sims, but yeah, this is not the version of Harvest Moon that I would recommend coming back to. The gameplay is okay. It's kind of amazing to see that they were able to do this with a Super Nintendo game and get as much as they could in there. But it's a pretty small game, and there's not a whole lot that you can really do with it. You only really have your farm, the crossroads, the town, this little forest, and then a mountaintop. And those are all the locations in the game. After that, you're, just kind of stuck. Wandering around talking to the same 12 people, dealing with your cows and your chickens. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I can see why it got pretty harsh reviews in the 2000s, even if I don't really agree with them. I forgot to mention this, you can only grow crops in the spring and the summer, so in the fall and the winter, you really don't have much to do. The graphics really are the high point in Harvest Moon. It is one of the better looking games on the SNES. Because it was released late in the console's life, the developers really knew how to get the most out of this aging hardware. And they put together just a beautiful looking game. The game isn't going to blow anyone away because modern indie games look much better than this, but it's still a very good looking one. The graphics get the job done, they don't try to wow anybody, because the game doesn't really try to wow anybody. It's just an adorable, kind of cozy game for the Super Nintendo. There are a few spots in this where I just find the graphics to be really calming and relaxing, especially when you go up to the mountain and you watch the sunset. Because that's an option in this game. It's got a very nice day-night cycle, so you can see the sun just setting over these trees. It's a really cool scene. I like that probably more than any of the other visuals in this game. There really isn't too much else to say. It's just a very good-looking Super Nintendo game. There are things that I like about it, and the graphics are definitely one of them. The animals are adorable, and there's just a whole lot of cute-looking things in this. For the most part, the reviewers really liked Harvest Moon. The only review from 1997 that I could find was from Nintendo Power, which gave it a 3.6 out of 5. The other reviews are mostly from the mid to late 2000s. After looking at Moby Games, I found more reviews, and they were mostly in the 8s and 9s. By 1997, the mainstream reviewers weren't really looking at the Super Nintendo anymore. It kind of explains why there weren't too many reviews in print for this game at that time. Some of the early blogs might have talked about it, or there might have been some talk on forums, but I can't find that, and they just weren't archived very well. The reviews that I did see, they gave the game 8s and 9s. Those were, again, mostly from the mid to late 2000s. And they were largely talking about the Virtual Console release of this on the Wii. There was really only one bad review for Harvest Moon. It was, ironically, from Honest Gamers. They gave it a 3 out of 10. The review includes some fair criticism of the gameplay, that it gets repetitive, it can be a little boring with the 2 months where you can't really do too much, and once you've done everything in the game, gotten married, set up your farm very well, have all the animals you can get, then you just run out of stuff to do. I think that's pretty fair. It's not a very long game. The days go by pretty quick, so I can see where they're coming from. I just don't get 3 out of 10. That just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. It is important to note that when this review came out, this was a little after AVGN started, and kind of crapping on retro games became fun for some people. And I don't really agree with the score, but I think they did raise some pretty fair points. I honestly find the Honest Gamers reviews to be fairly terrible. They give me a similar feeling to many of like the Planet reviews, like Dreamcast Planet. They just kind of suck, and it shows a big difference between like the professional journalists and somebody who's just trying to be funny or is simply a jerk. Looking back at this game is interesting. The original Harvest Moon has been, greatly improved upon. This first version, it's a very interesting first step, but no, I wouldn't say it's an amazing game. It's, pretty good, but not something that I would really recommend people going back to. While playing Harvest Moon, I noticed a few things that inspired Stardew Valley. Aside from the whole farming/ranching thing. In both games, you find a few festivals that are, pretty much the same or very similar. They both have adorable graphics. They also have kind of a strange dating sim system where, you have to buy gifts for people in order to make them fall in love with you. It goes a little bit farther in Stardew Valley, where you basically can interact with everybody and buy everyone gifts or complete quests for them in order to make them, like you and eventually fall in love with you. With Harvest Moon, it was just 4 people that you could really do that with, and you were locked into being a male character. I think the cows and the chickens look fairly similar to each other in both games. Not really a big surprise. They both look adorable, though. I had forgotten just what the animals looked like in Harvest Moon, and then going back and looking at them for this, I was like, oh, they do look really similar. That's cool. And they just look cute. Just really adorable. I had forgotten about all the festivals in Harvest Moon, just because I hadn't played it in so long. A few of them occur during the year. They are very similar to what's found in Stardew Valley. Like you have the egg hunt, you have one where they kind of combine the dance and also the potluck for Harvest Moon into one. They've got the same festivals where you have to give gifts to people. It's very hard to do that in Harvest Moon because you need to be carrying whatever you're bringing into town. And with only 2 inventory slots, it makes it very difficult. It's one of the things that I don't like about Harvest Moon is just how small your inventory actually is. But there are quite a few differences between the two, even though this bare-bones version of Harvest Moon does have essentially all of the same things in Stardew Valley. Stardew Valley just greatly improved on everything, and it took inspiration from all the other farming sims that had come before it. I do find the dating sim in both games just to be kind of strange, to say the least. You're giving out gifts to people to make them like you. This works as a game mechanic. I don't really mind it that much in a video game, but it just feels odd when I overanalyze the whole thing. Like, the only reason any of these people like you is because you're giving them shit. And if you didn't do that, none of them would even bother to address you or like you at all. It's a little different in Harvest Moon because you don't have all the quests that you can do, and you're only trying to romance them. You're not trying to, get recipes or anything like that because there's no cooking in that game. I'm sure I'll find more similarities as I, play the other games in the Harvest Moon series. And, when I look at games like Stardew Valley, I see more parts of Harvest Moon and Rune Factory in it. It's just cool to see those inspirations. And it's one of the reasons I enjoy going back to, look at the retro games after playing a bunch of indie games. It is very hard to not compare Harvest Moon with Stardew Valley. It really isn't a fair comparison at all, and there really isn't a game that I can compare with the first Harvest Moon, because it just lacks so many of the features that you've come to expect from a farming/life simulator game. This genre had to start somewhere, though, and Harvest Moon on the Super Nintendo kind of set the stage for better games to come. It created a market for things like Animal Crossing, Rune Factory, and all of the indie games that have basically taken inspiration from it. And many of them have greatly improved on the genre. Harvest Moon on the Super Nintendo is one of the first kind of cozy games. It's a relic from when developers and publishers took chances on something different. Big companies rarely take chances on these things now. It's just them sticking to the same formula that made them millions of dollars before. So, yeah, I really like these games. And I'm glad I went back and played Harvest Moon on the Super Nintendo, even if it isn't exactly how I remember it being, but I do kind of remember it giving me the same feeling of just being really excited to play something new and different, and then eventually realizing that I didn't want to play it anymore. And now it gave me the feeling of, I want to go play something better than this, because I know there are better things out there. Anyway, that's going to wrap things up. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I will talk to you all later. Bye.